Well, welcome to the Courageous Girls podcast. My name is Tara Matson. I am the co-founder with my husband, Jeff, of Courageous Girls, and have been the content curriculum developer. And I also wrote the book, Courageous, Being Daughters Rooted in Grace. That was written specifically for moms and women and trying to get to the root of what all women struggle with so that we can help mentor and model the road ahead for our own daughters. So if you are a woman who is either mentoring girls or raising a daughter, this podcast is for you. And so thanks for joining me. You might not have a Courageous Girls group. You might be intrigued by it, or you just want to learn. I'm here to resource you. I actually have years as a mental health provider. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, a licensed professional coach, and I've been doing teaching and speaking to women, couples, for parenting, marriage, leadership in the church for many decades now. I've actually been in ministry myself and was trained in Bible and theology. It was actually my first passion and call was to the church. And then as I was serving in the church and full-time staff, I realized that a lot of us aren't discipled or understand our own humanity. Then I jumped into private practice. And in my years of being in private practice, I sat with story after story after story of women who both at like 9, 10, 16 years old, 18 years old, all the way up to 45, 55, 65, and realizing, what if we could keep the end in mind and help mothers mother their daughters in a way that many of us didn't get growing up? Using clinical, biblical, and relational wisdom, I'm pulling in all kinds of resources into this podcast. So I'm so glad you're here. And I've been waiting years to get to do this. I wanted to start this out by really just sharing with you the heart of my book, Courageous. So if you've not read this book, it's Courageous, Being Daughters Rooted in Grace. And you know what? The funny backstory is I thought I was like hitting the light version of all the things that women need to address and that are at the root issues of all of our unwanted behaviors and relational dynamics and emotions. And what's so funny is the feedback I've gotten is that it's actually more meaty and heavy than I realized. So this was my surface level attempt to try to help us women start to really look under the hood and start to assess what Psalm 139 says. Search me and show me, Lord, if there's any anxious way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Invitation to say, help me to see what I'm believing, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, how my paradigm about you, about relationships, about my sexuality, about my mind, my body, my heart, and my soul. And so that's what this book is doing, because we are the ones that are modeling the way. So in good fashion, I'm going to read to you just a section of the introduction of Courageous. There is an audio version on Amazon, so you're welcome to listen to the whole book if you'd rather do that. I'm not going to read the whole book here, but I'm just going to do a couple podcasts with some snippets from each of the chapters and then give some insights years later on what we're still seeing in women and daughters today. So here it is. Introduction, the reality of being a girl. Growing up as an American girl in today's culture takes extraordinary courage. Yet it seems that the youth of this generation has increasingly fewer of the traits needed for the challenges ahead of them. The message to be more, do more, and fake it is pervasive in our nation. From magazine stands to social media messages, from television to textbooks, from our churches to our homes, these messages reflect a condition of our society. We cannot stop striving to gain or greaten our success. Despite our efforts, our society is not succeeding. We're actually more depressed, anxious, addicted, self-destructive, and selfish more than ever before. We are raised to believe that gaining material success, staying young, remaining healthy, and forming lasting relationships are going to bring us happiness. But the truth is, all these things fail us. None of them provide lasting security. Though they may cascade in a season, they always run dry over time. As a mental health provider and a ministry leader with over 20 years of experience, I've witnessed the negative effects of our culture on girls and women of all ages through the stories they share with me in confidential spaces. I've been blown away by the storylines they recount, many of which depict the same plot with different characters. In other spaces where people often feel safe to share their experiences, such as educational settings, or the stories abound as well. Their lives resemble many of the narratives of my closest friends, my neighbors, and even my own daughters. So often we think the worst case scenarios happen only to others. Yet we must know that all of us are sharing in these stories. I recall one client, a 14-year-old, quietly telling me about numerous boys who had approached her for nude pictures. She shared her stories with a brash tone intended to clear her value. To her, the sheer number of boys conveyed her high value among her teenage peers. Like many parents, her mother and father justified her phone as a necessary and convenient communication tool and trusted her to make good choices. They told her that sex before marriage is a sin, but the conversation ended there. And her private school education, filled with kids who wanted to please their parents, teachers, and God, was far from equipped to hold this young girl's hand as she walked through the thorn bushes of life. Despite having a good heart and a solid upbringing, she eventually sent pictures of herself unclothed to a boy who shared it with other male classmates. This increased the pressure to engage in oral sex with several boys whom she sort of liked. And as I listened to her story, my heart broke because she mirrored the experience of many other girls who explored these challenging situations alone, not because her parents didn't care, but because they were just simply unaware. This is just one of the many stories I share at the beginning of this book. And sadly, this story happened almost 15 years ago now. And what has happened over the years is we've seen this increase more and more and more. Parents are more concerned, mainly because phones have become more of a normal. Social media is more of the norm. And what our kids are exposed to, Christian or not, has become extreme, what I would call rated R, but it's very much a GPG version for many of them. They're desensitized and reprogrammed to think that this is normal. This is normal to value ourselves as just an object and to be used and to be seen as a sexual being earlier than we're ready. And we have kind of gone through a pendulum swing, even in the church, right? One side of the church is rejecting the purity culture that came in the 80s and 90s. If you're not familiar with the purity culture, it was kind of a true love waits idea, and having a ring or being willing to commit and sign a paper and say, I will wait to have sex till I'm married. But there just wasn't a lot of tools given in terms of how do you wait? And what do you do in the meantime with your sexuality? And it felt like a shame message for so many. I think that message was actually meant for good, and it is a biblical context. Sex is meant between a man and a woman in a committed relationship, and sexuality is meant to be a selfless offering and a covenant. There's pleasure, there's commitment, there's attachment, there's bonding, there's all kinds of things that happen in sexuality, and it's been brought and tainted into a very casual part of life. And this isn't new under the sun. When I was a kid, this is similar to what was happening for women. Maybe we just didn't have social media and phones to exacerbate it. Then we have this side of the church who is scared out of their minds. And so the rebellious part over here that came out of the purity culture kind of did a pendulum swing. And there's a lot of Christians who were like, don't shame me, don't body shame me, don't tell me what to do. God is, I'm a sexual being, and I'm okay to do as many things as I need to do in order to figure out who I am and what I'm about, and God will forgive me. The hardest part about that is that our girls are being exposed, and their neurobiology, their pathways are being shaped and formed, and it is layering them with shame and setting them up for even more recovery into their adult lives. And then the other side, the more extreme side of the church, is again fearful and again trying very hard to counter this over-sexualized culture, almost to the point where, again, same old, we're desexualizing ourselves. And God is the one who made us female. And it's our gender and our sexuality are a mirror of who he is. In a confusing culture, the messages are abounding. And one of the reasons I started Courageous Girls was because I remember counseling all of these girls and these moms, and I was holding my baby girls and I was scared out of my mind. I just thought, these are people who love Jesus, who are leading in the church. They're our pastors and our Bible study lead teachers and people who sincerely maybe even grew up in the church and knew the Bible, but had really hard stories. Exposure, early sexual abuse, sexual addiction in their marriages, emotional neglect and emotional abuse. And I think it's I don't know, enough is enough. I've always been a bit of an advocate, and depending on what wiring assessment you're looking at, you can probably peg maybe part of my number if you give me an Enneagram. But in my wiring, the core values index, I'm an intense merchant innovator. So what that means is I feel the world, I see the world relationally, and I have a vision for what's the potential that God has created. And it's an intense piece of who I am and how I am in the world and move through the world. And my innovator is, it's called wisdom and compassion. And it's this problem solver where I see systemically all of these problems and these issues. And then the way my brain thinks is I can come up with systems and solutions. And so because of those two, I think God gave me an ability to connect a lot of dots that women were facing and keeping the end in mind. As women, don't get blamed very often for the issues of girls. In fact, most people think it's dad's fault. And dad actually has a key role in a daughter's life and in all of our stories. Dad is a big key piece. And statistically, not all girls have a present dad, a loving dad, a safe dad. And there's a lot of brokenness in the families within the church and without of the church. The thing that I found most interesting is when I had women actually sit down and do their timeline and walk through all of the relationships in their life and their story. Mom had a profound role in her life. Mom is the first woman who models the way. She helps us understand what it means to be female, what it means to relate to men. Do we have a voice? Do we only stay at home? Do we work outside the home? Are we meek or are we loud? Are we controlled by our emotions or we stuff our emotions? I mean, all kinds of modeling that happens for us as girls. So dads are key, but moms are actually the primary person that is around most children. That's not the case for every family. But as I started to think through systemically, how could we help the next generation? Two things came to mind. One, every girl needs a trusted attachment figure. And why not be mom? And most moms want to be a very healthy, whole mentor to their daughters. It's a longing of most moms' hearts, but maybe they just don't know how. And they haven't had the experience in their own relationships. And so all they're doing is looking around and going, maybe reading books, Googling things on the internet, and just trying to figure out, how do I do this well? From both a biblical worldview, as well as I want to help my daughter just be able to deal with the realities of life. Like this 14-year-old girl that I wrote about, she's one of many stories. She had good parents. Her parents had no clue what she was experiencing. And so creating an attachment, a safe and trusted relationship between a mom and a daughter is vital. It doesn't mean that she might not have had a counseling still and might not have made these same choices. But if mom had been a key place where she was regularly checking in and talking about everything under the sun with her daughter, there might have been a different opportunity when these boys were pressuring her. Again, we can't protect our kids from every harmful thing that happens in life. That isn't the goal here. But we can help them not be alone. So that was the second thing, is that every single woman, whether she was a kid, a teen, or an 85-year-old, no joke, thinks that she's the only one that's ever gone through what she's gone through. It's a lie from the pit of hell. It's the enemy's way of isolation. You see that throughout scripture, particularly in the garden. But isolation is the number one way that the enemy gets us to believe the lies that God isn't trustworthy and that you're on your own. And so isolating us from healthy relationships is the number one tactic. And when I wrote this book back in 2018, fast forward, it's even worse. And we're finally waking up to the reality of the digital age and the impact of distracted parenting. And so here we are, courageous women who are longing to do this different, not only for our own journeys, but for our journeys of our daughters. You don't have to do a Courageous Girls group to be able to benefit from this podcast. But I will say, I want to leave you with a question at the end of each episode. And my question today is this: look at your own story, and who were the women that shaped your view and understanding of what it meant to be a woman, and shaped even your view of sexuality? Did it bring grace? Did it bring hope? Or did it bring shame? Did you want to run the other way? But taking time to actually look at that part of your story is really key to understanding your own journey of who you are and how you're modeling being a woman, how you're maybe even accepting what it means to be a woman. I'll share more about my story in the journey ahead. But for now, thank you for joining me. I'm going to be going through each of the chapters. These will be short little episodes. And in the meantime, I just want to encourage you that God is with you, and we don't have to perform or please or prove ourselves. He loves us just as we are. And that is the most amazing thing about our faith in Jesus Christ, and that grace means it's undeserved, and that God meets us where we're at, wherever you're at in your journey with God and with your healing journey as a woman. He meets us right here, right now, and he starts where we're at. You don't have to be anywhere else. It's just an open heart and a yes to say, I'm in. So thank you for joining me, and look forward to connecting with you next time. So you're ready to start your Courageous Girls group? Good. Go to mycourageousgirls.com or download the Courageous Girls app. And what you're going to do is you're going to register, and then you have access to all the curriculum. If you want to start your group, you're going to pray, Lord, who do you want me to start this with? Reach out for 1 to 2 other mamas and begin praying and asking God to show you. You really only need 5 to 8 of you with daughters that are around the same ages. So if you're going to start in 2nd grade, 2nd and 3rd grade, if you're going to start in 6th grade, 5th and 6th grade, you don't want to have a huge break there. But go to mycourageousgirls.com. We've got coaching information for you. And really, you start your group and you each are going to lead one time a month throughout the year. So really, if you've got 5 people in your group, you'll lead maybe once or twice a year. This is created for busy moms to help you walk and talk with your daughter at every stage of your growing years. This curriculum is so unique in that it's biblically, clinically, and relationally attuned to what girls are needing today. And I am your trusted guide. I've written all the curriculum. I've walked through it with my own girls. And I think you are ready for this. If you are nervous, that's normal. Part of this journey is trusting that God uses your yes and your trust that he will do the rest.